Hey guys, if you have purchased or just received the DJI Avata, you may be wondering, where do I start? Let's get straight into the first 19 things you should do to make sure you have the latest features, keep the drone safe, get the best videos possible, and be able to do them awesome FPV moves such as flips, rolls, and dives. But first, we need to pair everything together. If this is the first time you have used the DJI Avata, then before we can even think about flying, we have to make sure that the goggles, controller, and drone are all connected to each other. To start, let's bind the drone to the controller, and this process works for both the motion controller and FPV controller. To start, turn on your drone and controller, then press and hold the power button on them both until the lights start flashing and they make a beeping sound. After a few seconds, the lights will turn solid, the controller will stop beeping, and this signals that they have been paired successfully. Then, to pair the goggles to the drone, press and hold the power button on the drone until the lights start flashing again and you hear a beep. And also turn on the goggles and press the pair button between the two eyepieces. It's a little hidden, but it's located right here. Then wait for a few seconds and the goggles will stop beeping once they have been paired. Next up, we want to make sure that we have the latest firmware on all our devices so that we have the newest features and safety updates. You want to download the DJI Fly app to your phone, then connect it to the USB-C connection on the goggles. With the app open, you will get a prompt on the top left corner of the app to update firmware if required. Simply tap the prompt, let the updates run, and that's it. It couldn't be easier. Oh, and here's a quick top tip that catches so many people out. Sometimes the batteries also need a firmware update, and if you only pop the battery in to update the drone, you may find that when you get out on location and change to another battery, you get alerted to do a firmware update for it. So, when updating the drone, make sure to put every battery you have into the drone one by one and check it for the latest firmware. Now before we take a look at the next thing you should do, which is crucial if you bought DJI Care Refresh with the drone to make sure that you get full coverage, I just wanted to say a big thanks to today's video sponsor, which is Wirestock. Wirestock is a tool that helps you take the clips you capture with the DJI Avata and easily sell them as stock to potentially make a little bit of side income. It's as simple as uploading the drone clips you have captured to their website, and then they distribute it to all the major stock marketplaces. To make things even easier, you can use Easy Submission, and they will go through and add all the metadata to each clip for you. This is great because it means you can focus on getting great footage, edit it, upload it, and let Wirestock handle the rest. The best thing about Wirestock though is that you don't need multiple accounts on all the stock marketplace websites. You only have one account and one dashboard to track everything, including how many downloads you have had and, more importantly, the earnings for each clip. Wirestock also automatically creates a portfolio page for you, and you can use this to sell your stock directly to potential buyers by sending them the link. So if you want to try selling the clips you capture with your DJI Avata as stock, then head to the link in the description where you can get started right now. Now, if you bought Care Refresh with the DJI Avata, then listen up, because this next step is super important to make sure that you get the full coverage. To be able to benefit from the flyaway coverage included, you need to make sure that your controller is binded to your drone. To do this, again attach your phone to your goggles, and with the DJI Fly app open, you will get a prompt in the top left corner saying bind remote controller or goggles to aircraft to activate DJI Flyaway coverage. Simply tap this prompt and then follow the on-screen steps to be fully covered. Let's take a look at a few essential safety settings that means if your Avata loses signal, you don't lose your drone. With the goggles on, swipe right and go to the Safety Settings menu, and then scroll down to Advanced Safety Settings. In here, you will see an option called Aircraft Signal Lost Action, where you can choose what happens when you lose signal to your drone. There are 3 options to choose from: return to home, land, or hover. If you're in a large open area with few obstacles, then choosing return to home will be the best option. It means if you lose signal, the drone will ascend, fly back to the home point, and land automatically. However, if you're flying somewhere densely populated with objects such as a forest, hover or land will be a better option. This is because the Avata has no obstacle avoidance and could hit obstacles and potentially crash on its way back to you. Instead, having it either land or hover where you can go and retrieve it will be much safer in them locations. If you are using return to home, another very important setting you want to be aware of and change is the return to home altitude. This is the height the drone will automatically rise up to if you engage return to home, or engages automatically because of loss of signal. Again, because the Avata has no obstacle avoidance, if this height is too low, it could potentially fly into objects such as trees and buildings on its way back to you. Now, to prevent that happening, you should change the return to home altitude to be higher than any of the obstacles around you. Another setting you will see in the advanced safety settings menu that should be one of the first things you are aware of is emergency propeller stop. Emergency propeller stop is a feature that when you hold your joysticks in a certain position will stop the motors during flight. This might be useful due to a crash, a flyaway, damaged props, or when you've lost control of the drone. But if activated during a normal flight, the motors will stop and you will most likely crash. As a beginner, it's best to leave it turned off to avoid unintentionally stopping the motors mid-flight, as that could be pretty disastrous to say the least. Have you went out to fly manually, flipped the flight mode on the controller to manual, and find that it stayed in sport mode? What's going on? Well, that is because out of the box, manual mode is disabled as a safety precaution to avoid you triggering it by accident. So, one of the first things you should do after some simulator practice is enable full manual mode, and this will allow you to do them epic flips, rolls and dives. Firstly, in the settings menu, go to control and then remote controller. Scroll down to the bottom and change custom mode from sport mode to manual mode. This will now mean that when you change the toggle on the FPV controller to M for manual mode, you will now be able to use manual mode. But there will still be roll limits in place, meaning you can't flip the drone over or you can't point the drone straight towards the ground. So how do we remove them roll limits? To turn them off, go back to the top and scroll across to the gain and expo settings. In there you'll see an option called M mode attitude limit, and you want to turn this off to have full acrobatic control of the drone. Now if you love flying fast, you will want to be able to see just how fast you are flying. And you can see that on the bottom left of the screen with the goggles on. You can also see how high and how far away you are, which is really useful information when flying. But one of the first things you should do is make sure these figures are set to your unit preference. To do this, go to Settings, Control, and then under Units you can choose metric meters, metric kilometers, and imperial, which uses mile per hour. When it comes to storing your video files, you can use the internal storage of the DJI Avata, which has 20 gigabytes of space and will allow around 15 minutes of 4K video. However, most of us will instead be using a microSD card. With the microSD card inserted, we want to make sure we are recording to it and not the internal storage of the DJI Avata. We can change this by going to the settings, then camera, and under storage location, change this from internal storage to the microSD card. You can also see how much space is available here and format the card if required. Just remember though, if you do format the microSD card, make sure you have a backup of all the video files that were on it, because formatting it will completely wipe everything on the card. Sticking with that last point, if you are concerned about losing your video files because of an accidental format, or because you crash and lose the DJI Avata and subsequently the microSD card within it, then one of the first things you should do is turn on this next setting that allows you to simultaneously record video to the microSD card in your goggles so that you always have a video backup. Pretty awesome, right? So how do we do that? First, you will need a microSD card inserted in the allocated area on the goggles. Then go to Settings, Camera, Advanced Camera Settings, and you will see an option called Record With. You want to set this to both. Now, there are two different types of video you can store to the goggles. If you want a screen recording of what you see while flying, including all the on-screen interface, you will want to turn on the camera view recording option, which sits below the Record With setting. Or if you just want a backup of the video that's saved to the drone without the interface, then turn the camera view recording option off. Now for the exciting part. Let's dive deeper into the video settings to help you get the best clips possible. And the first thing we want to look at is resolution and frame rate. In the camera settings menu under video quality, we can choose from 4K, 2.7K, and 1080p. For the best quality possible, we want to use 4K, and you can choose from 50 FPS and 60 FPS. If you want to slow down your videos to get slow motion in post, then 2.7K and 1080p both have an additional 100 FPS mode, which will allow you to slow them clips down more when editing. This next setting is super useful if you use auto video mode. Auto mode can be super useful if you're flying into and out of areas with vastly different lighting conditions. For example, into and out of a building. The drone will automatically increase or decrease ISO and shutter speed accordingly to try and give you a properly exposed image at all times. However, as the ISO increases, so does the amount of noise on the image. So you want to set a limit as to how high the drone can automatically increase ISO to prevent a noisy image. We can do this by going to Settings, Camera, and scrolling down to Auto ISO Limit. If you do want the video settings to remain the same during your entire recording, or you want to set each value manually for the best results, then the first thing you should do is change to manual video mode. And you can do that by swiping up, going to mode, and selecting manual mode. Here, you can manually set ISO by swiping over to it and tapping, scrolling left or right to set your desired value, and then tapping to confirm. You can also set shutter speed and white balance the exact same way. Now, if you want shutter speed and white balance to remain locked, but the ISO to be automatic, again, really handy for flying into and out of buildings, for example, or around areas with vastly different lighting conditions. You can also do that by using manual video mode, but scrolling across to ISO and setting it to auto. Again, the ISO will not automatically go above the auto ISO limit we set in the previous step. One of the best features of the Avata is that you can have image stabilization applied to your videos automatically. And this is great as it smooths out a lot of the shakes and twitchiness that can happen if you're a beginner like me. For this reason, one of the first things you should do is decide what type of image stabilization you want to use. In the settings menu, select Camera and then EIS, which stands for Electronic Image Stabilization. And you will see two options to choose from. Rocksteady combines electronic image stabilization with complex algorithms to deliver stable, shake-free footage. Horizon Steady, on the other hand, works to always maintain a level horizon no matter how much you roll your drone. One of the other first things we want to set before even hitting record is the FOV or field of view. In settings under the camera menu, you can select Camera FOV and choose from normal, wide and ultra wide. The higher your field of view is, the more you will see of your surroundings, with normal being the narrowest and ultra wide being the widest. Here you can see a comparison of the three modes and notice how at the edges more of the surroundings are captured in ultra wide mode compared to normal, for example. With the DJI Avata, we have two color profiles we can choose from, and you can also change these two ways. The first method is by going to Settings, Camera, Advanced Camera Settings and selecting Color Profile. Or you can do this by swiping up to bring up the video settings menu and scrolling across to the Color Profile setting. If you're new to color profiles, you might wonder what the difference between normal and D-Cinelike is. Normal color profile provides video that is ready to go straight from the drone. It will look colorful, bright and vibrant, and requires little to no color grading in post. This is great if you want to quickly export the video for your projects or to post online. D-Cinelike, on the other hand, is a flat profile which preserves shadows, highlights and midtones better and gives you more flexibility when color grading, but comes out of the drone with lower saturation and contrast and needs to be color graded in a video editing software to get these benefits. Generally speaking though, after you do the color grading, you will end up with better looking footage. Now let's take a look at three super handy features that you should enable as one of the first things you do before going flying that will make it so much easier to control your drone, help you get better video, and even more importantly, never miss a clip. Let's start by looking at center point. Keeping the DJI Avata lined up in a subject or gap can be difficult, especially as a beginner. You can find yourself in situations where you think you're flying straight, but when you get close to a subject, you're actually way off center. Luckily, there is a really awesome feature you can turn on to help with this. In settings, under camera, you can turn on a feature called center point. This puts a small mark in the center of the screen, and using this, you can line up your clips much easier and know where the drone is heading at all times. Another absolutely fantastic feature that can help with composing your videos is grid lines. These are superimposed lines that you see on top of the video in your goggles that can help you frame subjects or locations, stay level, or keep an object centered, for example. Go to Settings, and in the camera menu, you will see an option to turn on grid lines. And when you tap it, you will see 3 options you can choose from. Again, which one you choose is personal preference, but I guarantee turning on grid lines will help you get better videos with your drone. There is literally no worse feeling than getting an epic clip only to realize you weren't recording. Have you ever done this? You've just captured an awesome piece of footage, you hit the button to stop recording, and your drone starts recording instead, and you realize you weren't recording the whole time? We've all been there, and I know that sinking feeling. This is an even easier mistake to make when flying FPV, because we can get caught up in the excitement with the goggles on, and we can forget to start recording. Luckily though, there is a super awesome feature that you should turn on as a first step that makes this less likely to ever happen again. Go to Settings, Camera, Advanced Camera Settings, and turn on Auto Record on takeoff. With this setting turned on, your drone will automatically start recording every time you take off and will mean you never miss getting that epic video clip ever again. So there we have it, the first 19 things you should do with the DJI Avata. I hope you have so much fun flying this awesome little drone. Check out these 2 videos next if you want to learn even more about drones, and I'll catch you in the next one.